got that attention, and I can see from the room we have a lot of people who are already very familiar with our study. That's the labor of love, as I say, of our work from 2008 to all the way to 2015. Very, very proud that every year, not only do we come out with the data, but we also publish a white paper which with expert commentary. So you can look at the data and experts provide you context of what that data is talking about. And you can download any of these reports on our website as well. In terms of our methodology, we have consistently followed a similar methodologies to make sure that when you look at tracking data, we are ensuring that we get the most responsible insights out there, because people make decisions based on what comes out in these studies. So this year we commissioned Six Factor Consulting. I think the Six Factor Consulting people are here in the room with us, Himanshu and Arun. And they conducted 3,600 face-to-face interviews in 53 cities in 18 countries, nations, and territories. Face-to-face, very important. Remember, we call it the largest survey of its kind of the region's largest demographic. Largest because there's no other survey that has a bigger number than 3,600 face-to-face interviews. So it might look smaller compared to online, but online sometimes is not reliable. You can sit behind a computer and say anything, but when you accost people, you invest money in there, make them feel more comfortable, tell them that interviews are anonymous, people are much more likely to tell the actual truth. And that's why we do face-to-face interviews. Gen Z, that's the sample. The cohort this year is Gen Z. Everyone born after 1997, 18 to 24 years old. So, that's a massive growing cohort of people. The sample is 50% male, 50% female, to ensure that we have voices from both genders. And this year we conducted it from March 27th to April 12th, right there during the Ramadan period as well. So we had more people with time to be able to talk about what's out there. We did the field survey across these countries in the GCC, in Levant, and others, which means Yemen, because it didn't fit anywhere else. So, that, as you can see, many of the countries are limping back to normalcy. North African markets, populous markets such as Egypt and Sudan, and you can see South Sudan was the latest addition. We did face-to-face interviews that we conducted in the 53 Arab countries. As you can see, we didn't just go to capital cities. We chose more urban areas in each city. For instance, in the UAE, we had 40% Abu Dhabi, 40% Dubai, and 20% Sharjah. So we get a much more of a national sample. So that's what we ensured. The polling methodology is both countries and gender are equally weighted, in the sense that if 100 million Egyptians couldn't sway the vote away, we follow what is called, to put it simply, the United Nations system: one country, one vote. So that is the methodology we use. So we ensure that you get a much more clearer view of the Arab youth across this region. And using international polling science, the margin of error is very acceptable, 1.63%, which makes our research very extremely reliable and accurate. Last year, we introduced the findings in 6 emerging themes. My Global Citizenship, which focused on who are the regions, who the Arab youth think are their allies or adversaries, their views on conflicts in the region, and of course, model nations. And that's the finding we're going to focus on today. And then, of course, there are findings on my politics, my livelihood, my identity, my aspirations, my lifestyle, as the video explained to you before. This year, we are using a phased approach to the launch of the findings. And this is based on feedback that most of you told us that, when you launch the findings with so much data, a lot of our stakeholders don't have enough time to be able to absorb it and understand the significance. And that's why we have listened to you, and that's why we're going to stagger the launch of our other findings over the coming weeks. So after the Eid break, we'll come to you with findings on my politics and livelihood, my identity, and of course, aspirations and lifestyle as well. So I hope you find the findings from my global citizenship. We have some very interesting insights for you today. And I'd like to hand over to Nidal for a quick description in Arabic for our friends.
Thank you سنيل. سيدات والسادة، أسعد الله صباحكم بكل خير، ونشكركم حضور هذه الفعالية المهمة، وكما نشكر المتابعين الذين انضموا إلينا على وسائل الإعلام الاجتماعي لمتابعة البث المباشر على قنواتنا، على قنوات السوشيال ميديا. طبعا إنها النسخة 15 للاستطلاع، والاستطلاع تم تطويره بحيث يرصد رؤى، طموحات وآمال ومخاوف الشباب العربي كما ذكر سنيل. لكن الأهم والسؤال الدائما يطرح علينا: لماذا نقوم بهذا الاستطلاع؟ وهناك لهذا الموضوع 3 أسباب رئيسية. أولا، السبب الأول مرتبط بعملنا احنا في قطاع التواصل الاستراتيجي والعلاقات العامة، وهو الحاجة لوجود بيانات مهمة عن الشريحة الأكبر من الشباب العربي الذين يصل عددهم إلى 200 مليون شاب في المنطقة. السبب الثاني هو توفير بيانات لصناع القرار من الحكومات والقطاع الخاص وغيره من الجهات المهتمة في عملية صنع القرار وتطوير السياسات، وهذا مهم جدا. ومهم جدا أن نرصد هذه الرؤى على مدى الزمن. كما ذكر زميلي، رصدناها من عام 2008 حتى اليوم عبر أكثر من 45,000 مقابلة مباشرة. منهجية إدارة هذه الاستطلاع تمت من خلال رصد 53 مدينة حول العالم العربي في 18 بلد. الشريحة العمرية من بين 18 إلى 24 شاب وشابة، توزيع الجنسين بين 50 إلى 50%، وتم رصدهم كما قلت عن طريق مقابلات مباشرة. المواضيع الرئيسية التي ركزنا عليها العام الماضي وهذه السنة نركز على هذه المواضيع أيضا، ولكن الاختلاف سيكون بأننا سنعلن عن هذه المواضيع بشكل متتابع. اليوم سنركز على موضوع مواطنتي العالمية، وبعده سننتقل إلى موضوع التوجهات المستقبلية عند الشباب العربي، سبل المعيشة، وأهم ما يتعلق بالشباب العربي من ناحية الفرص العمل والتعليم وغيره سيكون موضوع للتركيز. أيضا الهوية، ما هي محددات الهوية عند الشباب العربي؟ هل هي الدين؟ هل هي العائلة أم غيره؟ سنناقشها في هذا الموضوع عندما نطلق الاستطلاع. الطموحات المستقبلية عند الشباب العربي موضوع آخر، ونمط الحياة ونمط الاستهلاك واستهلاك وسائل الإعلام الاجتماعي وغيره، والتي شهدنا فيها تطورا ملحوظا في الفترة الماضية. أترك لزميلي سنيل ليأخذنا من خلال مواطنتي العالمية وأهم ما خرج بهذا الاستطلاع. Over to you, Sunil.
Thank you, Nidal. I think moving on swiftly to the global citizenship finding. Here we explore, as I said earlier, on how do young Arabs see who are their friends, who are their enemies. And what we found is that Arab youth value both traditional and the new alliances. And when you look at that geopolitical landscape, it's shifting fast. And I think this is not new this year. I think this has been happening over the last 5 to 7 years, where traditional allies like the US and Russia and France and UK are changing to very new players. And let's look at what that is. So in this section, we'll be looking at three distinct findings. One is on the shifts that are happening in the geopolitics in the Middle East and as seen by Arab youth. And then their view on regional conflicts. How do they see, especially the Palestinian-Israeli issue, the saber rattling between Israel and Iran, and how does that impact the region, and some really interesting findings there. And of course, finally, their views on who do they see as model nations, Who do they think they want to, which country do they want to live in, which country they would like their own country to emulate. So those are the three sections we're looking at. Nidal, just a quick overview on this.
Thank you, Sunil. موضوع المواطنة العالمية موضوع مهم جدا، ومن خلاله استعرضنا 3 محاور رئيسية. المحور الأول: ما هي رؤى وتطلعات الشباب العربي حول التغيرات الجيوسياسية؟ ما يرونه كتحالفات وغيره من الأشياء المتعلقة بالوضع السياسي العام وتأثرهم بهذا الوضع السياسي. الموضوع الثاني تحت المواطنة العالمية هو النزاعات الإقليمية. كيف يرى الشباب العربي النزاعات الإقليمية والتوترات اللي في المنطقة، ورأيهم حول القضايا المهمة كالقضية الفلسطينية ودور إيران وغيره. والمحور الثالث وهو حول البلدان المثالية، وكيف يرى الشباب العربي البلد المثالي الذين يودون أن يعيشون فيه، والبلد المثالي الذين يودون لبلدانهم أن يحذوا حذوه. أترك لسنيل الآن استعراض الجانب الأول وهو الجيوبوليتكس. Over to you, Sunil.
So this is the key slide that I'd like you to focus on. I hope all of you can see this at the back as well. As you can see, the top finding is that Turkey and China now rival traditional allies such as the United States and the United Kingdom. And that's an extremely interesting finding. And we've been seeing this trend changing, as I said earlier, over the last 5 to 7 years. So this is a major geopolitical shift that we look at. I think young people they are much more open-minded. As I said, Gen Z generation, they are open to looking at new friends. And I think not that they want to chuck away the old traditional allies like the United States, but what you can see is the rise of Turkey and China. Last year, Russia was among the top 3 allies of the region. This year, they dropped to number 11. So that's a major drop. One can deduce it could be possibly its role in the Ukraine war and other things as well. UK's rise to number 3 is fairly significant. And you can see that South Asian countries, India and Pakistan, have risen. So much so that India, in fact, is higher than the US. Could be many reasons for that, many cultural ties between the Arab world and the South Asian countries. And we're seeing those shifts happen very, very strongly. But when you really look at, as you can see in the greens here, you're seeing strong ally, which is the darker green, and that somewhat of an ally, the lighter green. So when you just focus, if you look at the micro data on strong allies, you will see that the United States still remains the number 1 strong ally with 37%. UK is second with 35. Turkey then falls to number 3 at 26. France comes in with 21, and China with 21, Germany with 20, and Russia is down to 17%. So when you look at micro data, it's changing, but overall, when you look at it, Turkey scores high with 82%. So those were non-Arab countries. When we looked at Arab countries, and here's a surprise finding, we see Qatar come in as the number 1 ally. It is the first time that Qatar has risen as a number 1 ally here, and followed by Kuwait. Qatar was at 92%, Kuwait at 91%, Egypt at 89%, UAE at 88%, Saudi Arabia at 86%. So not much differences, but most young Arabs see the GCC countries and Egypt as their strongest allies. And you can see that more and more young Arabs rely on their own to be able to be their allies and their friends. But when you again look at a little bit of micro data, you will see that KSA is seen as a strong ally, 54%, UAE at 49%, Qatar at 47%, Kuwait at 44%, and Egypt at 32%. So the micro data on strong ally, you'll see Saudi and UAE emerge at the top. So very, very interesting how that dynamics change, and probably we'll talk about why Qatar has come up as a top ally. We call it the World Cup effect. I think in November and December, Qatar was the toast of the entire Arab region. You know, the fact that Morocco came into the semifinals, a lot of the football crazy Arab world was very emotional when the Moroccan players got their mothers on the field. And there was this galvanizing moment for the entire Arab world to come as one. And I think that created what is called the feel good factor. Qatar spent $200 billion investing in creating the infrastructure for the World Cup, the FIFA World Cup. Was that money well spent? Well, one indication is here you have it. You know, it's paid off, I think, to be emerge as a favored ally, at least in the eyes of the Arab youth. But having looked at the geopolitics and who people are, friends and adversaries, we asked a very simple question of Arab youth. We said, of all the countries, we gave them a list of countries that are important in geopolitics, and we asked them, who do you think has the most influence? And influence could be positive or negative, it could be either one. But look at the dominance of the United States in the minds of young people. It came as the most dominant country, which has the most influence, followed, of course, by the UAE, Saudi, Israel, Russia, and Iran as well. So you can see, even if the United States want to disengage with the region, but still they are seen as an enabler, as a very strong influence in the geopolitics of the region. I mentioned the U.S. Propensity to disengage with the region, especially after the fall after the stoppage of the war on terrorism. I think when you really look at that decision, we asked young people, do you agree or disagree with the United Nations decision to disengage with the region? You know, nearly 61% said yes, they support that the US should disengage with the region. And you can see that the sentiment is the same across all the three regions, the Gulf, the Levant, and North Africa. One of the rare occasions where all three regions think of this as similar. We further dug a little deeper into how young people see who's their friend, and we gave them what is called a binary choice. We said, in the next 5 years, who would be an important ally to you? Will it be the US or Russia? So this is a binary choice, and you can see 66%, nearly two-thirds of the sample voted for the United States as an important ally for the next 5 years. And that across the GCC at 68, 79, nearly 80% in North Africa. But when you look at the Levant, bit different. Half of the sample in the Levant, 50% voted that Russia would be their strong ally. We gave them a similar binary choice, US versus China, who's important in the next 5 years. Again, the US stood up as the choice, as an important ally. And again, in the GCC and North Africa, US scored high at 66 and 70, but China came at 49% in the Levant. So the Levant sample looks at this a bit differently. But if you look at the major markets, you're seeing the importance of the US as an important player, as an influential player in the geopolitics of the Middle East. They're there to stay. And finally, we look in this section on how young people look at the Ukraine war. If some of you may remember, last year we asked who's responsible for it, for the Ukraine war. And surprisingly, a majority said the United States, not Russia. But this year we asked the question, so how do you see this war resolving? And the top finding was that most people think it will be resolved through diplomatic negotiations. That's 28%, and 25% said the war will continue for a long time with no clear resolution. So when you really look at this section on geopolitics, what do we see? We see that the new reality is multipolarity. the unipolar world that we were also used to, with one major power dictating how the region needs to move in foreign affairs, is changing. You have new players coming in. So the multipolarity is something we're looking at. Arab youth are seeking new friends, but old loyalties and enmities remain. However, US is still a dominant force in the geopolitics. We think foreign actors in the Arab world, one of the deductions, this is a hypothesis that we are presenting to you, foreign actors must prove themselves to be honest brokers. I think young people are much more discerning in their opinion and their views. And despite the U.S. Calling for further disengagement from the region, the youth still see the U.S. as a strong ally and a dominant force. So clearly, what we are seeing in this section, the battle for the hearts and minds of young Arabs is still to be won. And that's an interesting finding.
Thank you, سنيل. طبعا الشباب العربي متأثر بما يدور حوله من تغيرات جيوسياسية. لن أقف بشكل مفصل كما ذكر سنيل على الأرقام، سأترك لكم أو نترك لكم قراءة الأرقام بالطريقة التي ترونها مناسبة. لكن أهم ملامح هذا الاستطلاع حول التغيرات أو التحولات الجيوسياسية، رأينا معا وجود تركيا كحليف أول بنسبة 82%، مقارنة بالحلفاء التقليديين الولايات المتحدة والمملكة المتحدة وحتى روسيا التي نزلت إلى المركز السابع. للحلفاء من داخل المنطقة دول مجلس التعاون بعمومها، وقطر أولا، ومصر من أهم الحلفاء للشباب في المنطقة بشكل عام. والتفاصيل البيانية التي ينظر من خلالها الشباب على فك ارتباط مع الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. 61% من الشباب العرب يشجعون ويؤيدون فك ارتباط مع الولايات المتحدة، ولكنهم في الوقت نفسه عندما ينظرون إلى الأعوام الخمسة القادمة يقولون أن الولايات المتحدة ستكون من بين الحلفاء الرئيسيين لهذه المنطقة. إذن هناك تباين في آراء الشباب العربي حول المتغيرات الجيوسياسية، ونرى من خلال هذا الجزء الأول من مواطنة العالمية هذا التباين واضحا. وننتقل الآن إلى وجهات نظر الشباب العربي حول النزاعات الإقليمية مع زميلي سنيل. Over to you, Sunil.
Thank you. Was that a good gist of everything? Did he miss anything, Martin? No, he did a good job. Thank you, Nidal. Okay, moving on to the next section, which is on how do Arab youth see the conflicts that are prevalent in the region. And it's an interesting one. And the first one we asked them, of course, is how do they see their government's move to normalize diplomatic relationships with Israel? And here we are seeing most Arab youth oppose the normalization of ties with Israel, but those in the UAE, Egypt, and Morocco strongly support it. The question we asked is, do you agree or do you support or oppose your government's decision to normalize ties with Israel? So you can see, if we had taken this picture maybe 7 or 8 years ago, you would see a very different picture. But you can see the greens that are rising there. But you can see the dominant voice is that young Arabs oppose the normalization. But there's change happening. You can see 75% of the young Arabs in the UAE support the accords. They 97. On the other hand, Sudan, which is one of the 4 countries that signed the Abraham Accord, oppose it, a majority of them. Similarly, in Morocco, youth are divided on the decision. 50% support their nation's decision to normalize ties with Israel, while the other don't. Bahrain, about 30% continue to support the decision. But across Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Iraq, Palestinian territories, young Arabs strongly oppose any normalization of ties. We then moved on to ask them questions about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. How likely do you think this issue will be resolved in the next 5 years? So it's a future outlook. And we are seeing a fairly dismal picture because only uh, two-thirds of the young Arabs in the Levant and North Africa, in Africa believe that the conflict is unlikely to be resolved. There's a bit of optimism in the Gulf states where you have nearly 60% feel that this issue will be resolved in the next 5 years. But when you look at North Africa, it's 70% in the Levant, for instance, say this issue will not be resolved in the next 5 years, and that is a kind of disappointing finding on one of the biggest problems the Arab world has faced for nearly 75 years. We asked them the question again on with growing national issues in the Arab countries, do you think the Arab world gives enough attention to the Palestinian Israeli issue, adequate attention and focus? And here again, barely a third say the Palestinian Israeli issue get the attention it deserves from the Arab world. So there again, you can see one third, 32% say it gets attention, but a majority of the young Arabs across the Arab world say doesn't get enough attention. This is something we've been seeing for the last 10 years, while in the beginning of our survey, it was the number one issue. When we asked them the question, what are the big issues or barriers to, for future resolution of the Arab world, the Palestinian-Israeli issue came as among the top three at least. Now it's dropped to number 7, number 10. We think obviously because national issues have come to the fore, but there's still attention being paid, so it's not as if it's completely ignored. We then moved on to ask the question about Iran and Israel, the saber rattling that's going on. You had a general from the U.S. From the Israeli army saying there's likely to be a military conflict happening between the two countries. So we asked the question, with existing tensions between between Iran, Israel, and Western countries, do you think this could ultimately, we gave them a binary choice, lead to a military conflict or be resolved through diplomatic measures or means? 60% said this will lead to a military conflict. And that's the voice of the Arab street. Probably not the view in the higher offices of government, because there are so many new moves happening around, Saudi and Iran coming together. China brings them together. There's talks between Saudi Arabia and Israel. There's a very strong relationship between the UAE and Israel. But when you really look at it, the voice on the Arab street is that this is a big issue, and 60% feel that this could lead to a military conflict, which is something I can't even imagine, but that's the view on the street. Hopefully, it's wrong. We then asked them a question on what do you see the future of Iran? With as you know, with the custodial death of Masa, there was huge amount of protests on the street, and there continue to be unrest in Iran. Young people, in fact, all age groups are out on the street protesting the lack of freedom, the ability to create a life of their own, and lack of opportunity. Of course, a country suffering from decades and decades of sanctions from the US and other Western countries. So we asked them, how do you think the future of the government in Iran is? 20% said Iran will experience a military coup, or Iran will see more civil unrest. So a rather gloomy prediction on Iran, which is a neighbor of the Gulf countries, but an extremely important country when you really look at where the future is. And I think there are insights that even businesses can take out of this. What does this mean moving forward? You can see a lot of conflicts ebbing. Look at Iraq and Syria and Libya and Yemen. All of these places, all these conflicts are ebbing. They're coming down, and we were hoping that the region will enjoy a youth dividend, or rather a peace dividend moving forward. But now you have these clashes in Sudan, which is a terrible thing. But the saber rattling between these two countries still bring a certain risk quotient that businesses should consider as well in their future planning.
Thank you, Sunil. موضوع النزاعات الإقليمية يشغل بال الشباب العربي بشكل سريع. القضية الفلسطينية كانت محور الاهتمام، وموضوع تطبيع العلاقات مع إسرائيل يواجه رفضا من معظم الشباب العربي، ونرى تباينا في المعلومات والبيانات في الدول التي وقعت على اتفاقات إبراهام أو الدول التي تربطها علاقات دبلوماسية مع إسرائيل. هناك تشاؤم في إمكانية حل القضية الفلسطينية، ومعظم الشباب العربي لا يرون أفقا لهذا الحل، وتركيز الدول العربية الأخرى على شؤونها المحلية بالنسبة للشباب العربي لا يعطي للقضية الفلسطينية أي أولوية لدى حكومات الدول الأخرى. أما فيما يختص بالشأن الإيراني والصراع مع إسرائيل والغرب، فالشباب العربي يرى على عكس ما هي مجريات الأمور أن هناك تصعيدا ما بين إسرائيل ودول الغرب قد يؤدي إلى حرب. وفيما يتعلق بالشأن الإيراني الداخلي، يتوقع الشباب العربي استمرار التضاربات الداخلية، ومن المتوقع أن يشهدوا انقلابا عسكريا في إيران حسب رؤى وتوجهات الشباب العربي فيما يتعلق بالنزاعات الإقليمية. And now over to you, Sunil, to talk about the most interesting finding about model nations.
Absolutely. So here we asked the question, and this is something we started in 2012. So it's 12 years since we've been asking this question. Which country, and we gave them a whole range of countries, both developed and developing, from the region, outside the region. We say, which country do you want to live in? And which country do you want your own country to emulate? So these were the two key questions we asked. And on the first question of which country do you want to live in, here's the results. And not surprisingly, the United Arab Emirates has been the top choice since we started the question in 2012. So for 12 years in succession, the UAE came as the top country that young Arabs want to live in. But this year, oh, that's nice. That's a record. Nobody clapped to our findings. Thank you, Sam. Yeah. Okay, so the UAE came on the top, and clearly I think there's reason to clap on that and to celebrate this, because clearly, there are many reasons, and we'll come to why young people chose. We asked them the question, why do you choose UAE? And some very valid reasons come through. But let's look at these findings. You have these top 5 that we've focused here. And not surprisingly, the United States has always remained as number 2 choice, as a country that young people want to live in. Canada came in strongly as number 3. And for the first time, after 9 years, Qatar figures among the top 5 as a choice. And then UK rose up as well. So when you look at it, Qatar was there in 2014. So after 9 years it comes, and that's a great credit to the country. We call it the World Cup effect again. As much as a choice as a top ally among Arab countries, they see Qatar as a model nation, which is great. UK comes back after 2020. They were on the 2020 list. They come back onto the field. So an interesting choice of top 5 of countries young people want to live in. The next question is, which country would you like your own to like or to emulate? And here again, UAE scores number 1 spot, followed by the United States and Canada, same slots. Qatar remains as a strong number 4, and tied for number 5 is Saudi Arabia and UK. And I think the fact that when you really look at this list, you're seeing 3 Gulf countries being seen as model nations by young Arabs is a big vote of confidence for a number of things that are happening in the Gulf countries. I think its moves to be able to diversify from oil, its ability to look at a much more moderate way of life, especially within the Islamic countries. And I think a lot of those moves have been recognized by people across the Arab world. And of course, these countries are places of great opportunity for jobs for young people. These are people across the 18 countries who vote. And I think the fact that US and Canada are firm second and third, and UK returns after 3 years, are significant. I told you earlier, we asked them the question, why do you choose the the UAE as their top choice? 5 associations. We gave them a set of associations and they had to vote which one. The top association was 41% said safe and secure environment. 28% said has a growing economy. 24, effective and visionary leadership. 22% said clean and enjoyable environment. 20% said easy to start a business. AB, so that's a nice story for entrepreneur, I suppose. Yeah. So that's among the top 5 reasons why young people want to come here. Why they want to look at the UAE as an important destination. But when you look at other associations, these are much of the softer messages. They say a good place to raise a family, 19%. High quality education system. Sometimes we take it for granted, the kind of quality education system the city provides. Second to none anywhere in the world. Has a strong cultural heritage, though it's a new country, but they feel there is a cultural heritage and there's an emphasis in the UAE. Respects cultural traditions. I think this is probably the most tolerant nation in this part of the Suez, actually. And welcoming and friendly to expats. So I think some of these key decisions, the wise leadership does actually bring about an association of the UAE making it the top choice among model nations as well. Okay. I've just been told by my good friend Anthony, who did this event. So a round of applause for Anthony here. We've just been told that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid has tweeted this result as we speak in this second. Can we put it up there? Oh, there we go. So if I may read this out to you, for the 12th year in a row, the UAE has emerged as the preferred country to live and work in, followed by the USA and Canada, among young Arabs surveyed across 53 cities in 18 Arab nations as part of the Arab Youth Survey. They also see it as a model they wish their own countries would emulate. We repeat our consistent message to the Arab youth. The UAE is an Arab country. Its hand extends to the Arabs and remains open to helping achieve the dreams of the Arab youth. Our aspiration for the entire region is for it to rise and become a land known for realizing dreams and contributing to human civilization. That's a wonderful. His Highness and his office have always supported us in making sure that we come out with the findings. They've always told us it's your finding, you're independent, you should go out and tell them. And His Highness has always supported us with this tweet, which gives us the impetus to continue with this and come out with it and nurture the study, because we believe it clearly helps governments and businesses, others in the region as well. So I think, Nidal?
Yes, thank you, Sunil. I mean, بالنسبة للدول المثالية دائما نتكلم عن دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة، وللسنة 12 على التوالي تكون هي الدولة المثالية. لكن على المستوى الشخصي يسعدني أن هناك دولتين أخريين، قطر والمملكة العربية السعودية، دخل قائمة ال5 الجهات أو الدول المفضلة سواء للعيش أو الاقتداء بها. فدولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة هي وجهة للشباب العربي. وإذا بحثنا في أهم الأسباب التي تدعو الشباب العربي لهذا التوجه نراها في توفير فرص العمل، الأمن والأمان، البيئة النظيفة، وسهولة بدء الأعمال. ولكن هناك بعض الأسباب الأخرى التي على المستوى الشخصي أيضا أنا لاحظتها. القدرة على تشكيل أسرة أو بناء أسرة مهم جدا، الثقافة المتنوعة، ولا شك بالنسبة للمملكة العربية السعودية التغيرات التي حصلت مؤخرا والتركيز على الاستثمار والترفيه كان لها عامل مهم في استقطاب انتباه الشباب العربي. وأما بالنسبة لقطر فكان موضوع استضافة كأس العالم 2022 كان عامل مهم في تغيير وجهات نظر الشباب العربي حول أهمية قطر وتوحيد آراء الشباب العربي حول هذا البلد ودوره كوجهة مثالية للشباب العربي. I will leave it now for Sunil to have a concluding remarks.
Thank you. I think those are the findings within the global citizenship that we are sharing today. We will soon come back after the Eid break with other findings of the other themes, which will be very, very interesting, of course. But really, what do we gain from looking at these data? And I think the key insights we feel are, first of all, in terms of geopolitics, multipolarity is a reality. And I think the fact that the unipolar world where one nation controls this vast land of 400 million people or 400 plus million plus people is a reality. And I think the battle for the hearts and minds of young Arab youth is an ongoing one, and it's still to be won. I think that's the top finding we think. The second, I think, is that foreign actors should be seen as honest brokers if they want to be able to win this. And I think that's a critical finding. And I think more and more young Arab are looking inwards as their new allies rather than outwards. So, and there's a certain amount of independence in how they see their future and their security environments moving forward. But one of the bright spots of this year's global citizenship finding is the fact that the sudden surge in popularity of the Gulf countries, UAE, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. And that is an unbelievable bright spot of this year's findings within this theme, where more and more young people are seeing this place as a land of opportunity. In fact, one of the findings, which is not in this deck, is that 87% of the entire cohort across the 18 countries said events such as the FIFA World Cup, the Expo 2020 Dubai, has actually galvanized the Arab world and has increased Arab pride. And 87% said that, voted that that was a big, big impact of these two big events. I think it led to greater understanding of the Arab world. I think no longer is the world view on the Arab world defined by Western media. I think there is another story that needs to be told, which is a little different from international Western media, especially. So I think Saudi Arabia has as well added to that mix, you know, a land of opportunity, new leadership, a moderate way of the Islamic life that they have. And of course, Saudi Arabia is $1 trillion economy. It's a G20 economy. That economy is going to double in less than 10 years. It is the power that many know it is going to be. There's no looking away from that. So some very interesting findings. We hope you found the insights interesting and useful in your work. We hope to come back to you in another 2 weeks with the rest of the findings as well. We have, I think Nidal and we like to open the floor for questions. I mean, we have friends from the media. We have many of our clients over here. We have some friends as well and associates. The floor is open for questions. We have, can I have the people with the roving microphones? Who do we have? There, Akshata and, okay, Tiffany. So all you have to do is raise your hand if you have a question, a burning question. Please ask some questions because we like to make it interactive. We've done with speaking from this side. Anybody want to raise their hands? Okay, there's one here. Yes, Shruti Nair from AGBI.
Very, very interesting survey as always, Sunil. And one of the key things is we've seen a drastic shift over the years as to how the results and the questions are also slowly but surely evolving. But again, last time we spoke about 2, 3 years back, just after COVID, one of the key findings you mentioned was that a huge majority of the Arab youth were looking at leaving their countries and leaving the nation to go and not just emulate but also settle down in other countries. What has happened to that number? Has that come down or is the sentiment the same?
You'll have to wait a couple of weeks to get that. We definitely asked that question. I think, if I remember 3 years ago, nearly 40% of the Arab youth across the vast Arab world wanted to emigrate, and that was a red flag finding. And in fact, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed at that time tweeted saying, you are losing your wealth. In fact, he was very open with his comments, addressing Arab nations. So we think that is a continuing trend, is all I can say now. But in a couple of weeks, in the section theme, My Aspirations, we're going to be asking the question about immigration, and that finding will be there. But I can tell you that that is a continuing trend, especially if you remember the finding from 3 years, Shruti, we talked at that time. It's mostly the countries within Levant and North Africa. Those are the troubled nations where young people, where if you really look at it, you have the white paper with you. In certain countries, youth unemployment is at 44% in certain countries, nearly 50% youth unemployment. In certain countries, there's an entire generation in Iraq and in Libya and in Syria have lost the opportunity for education. What do you want these young people to think about in the future? So we have this troubled sample within Levant, North Africa, and I think that is a serious concern as a region. So thank you for your question, but we'll give you the definite details shortly. One here.
Thanks, Sunil. You mentioned that the UAE is still, one of the big, the nation that everyone wants to be in or wants to emulate. I'm curious about the part where you actually highlighted that, the UAE is being seen as, the association is that, it is the easiest place to start a business in. I just wanted to ask if you can mention what you've heard about the other nations, because there is a lot of interest in Saudi Arabia. There is this kind of competition going on between the GCC nations. Is there anything you can reveal about that right now, or should we wait for later?
I wish I could give you an answer, AB from Entrepreneur Middle East. Since the UAE was there consistently, we didn't ask that question with both. We specifically asked the question of UAE. We did not ask that question on Saudi because we didn't know it would come up in the top 5. So it was not in the questionnaire. So I'll probably add it next year. Yeah. But I think we can deduce some of the things I talked about, how the perception of Saudi is changing, the World Cup effect and those kinds of things. So, the choice, it's such a choice driven by the soft power of a nation. Of course, the economics work, but if you want to go to a country, you got to feel good about it. And when you see the World Cup and see the success of Qatar, you want to go there. You want to vote for the country. So, 200 billion is a big ticket item to invest in a World Cup, but it's well worth the effort. I think, large events like Expo and FIFA actually bring the Arab world, another side of the Arab world, to international audiences, which never come. All you see is conflict, war, disagreements. That's what you see on BBC and CNN. Sorry, Caroline. Yeah. They run because of the region. But we need to change that. And I think there's another Middle East that we need to talk about. Yes, Caroline. You don't agree with me, I'm sure. I only watch CNN.
Well, thank you very much. We're always waiting desperately to know the results of your research and also your surveys, because the outcome is very important. And as you said rightly, that although they're the majority in the Arab world, but they're silent majority. Nobody is really, they don't really care to go and ask them what exactly is going on. So thank you very much. 15 years is a milestone. So I'm wondering, from the first one until the 15th, any major points, like 2 to 3 points, that think that there was a real change from the 1st till the 15th in the thinking or the demands or the concerns of the Arab youth? If you have 3 things that you can share with us. And also at the same time, so far I've noticed that you were focusing on the political aspect and geopolitical and all that stuff, but we also talk to some universities, and we know that they have a concern that what would be the future for them finding jobs.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is also going to appear
Yeah.
in the second and third and
Yes.
fourth editions.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, absolutely. I think, Caroline, thank you for asking that question. I think how things have changed over the last 15 years is a very interesting, I need to take some time off to put all the data together and see how that tracking chain data is changing, what's changing on the ground. We've been looking at it, 45,000 interviews is a massive asset. That's data worth its weight in gold. And we want to be able to do that, and we're looking at that exercise to look at it. But there are some top line details. The world, as was seen in 2008 by the young Arabs, today they are almost in their 40s, actually, when you look at that age group, to the world we are looking at now. These are the people who have really not experienced the big epochal events in the region, Arab Spring and the rise and fall of Daesh and the impact of the pandemic and the whole new and all the conflicts around the region. They've come in with a fresh new outlook, and that's why we've themed this the living in a new reality. So you see that changing trend, dramatic changes. It's a completely new world that these young people are seeing today. And that's the real trend. We definitely, in the other themes we're looking at in terms of my livelihood, young people are talking. We ask them questions about, how do you rate your education system in your country? What kind of jobs are you going to work for, the private sector or the public sector? Earlier the dominance of government as the sole giver of jobs for the Arab world has now completely changed, as you can see from last year, to much more young people going to private sector, simply because the government's maxed out. They couldn't create any more jobs. But what is the big positive finding, which I'm sure Sam has reported in the past as well, in Entrepreneur, is that more young people want to start their own business. And that rise of entrepreneurialism is something, as we see, as a continued trend. So just as I told Shruti, we just have to be a little patient. We'll come out with it. When we finish all the findings, we'll come out with the full report, which talks of all the 6 themes. And you'll have all of that by early September in your hands, the full report of the 15th Arab Youth Survey. So yes, we delved into very important questions on personal finance, on jobs, on the rise of entrepreneurialism. And of course, I think you'll see much more interesting questions with some new questions added as well. So thank you, Caroline, for following that. Yes, Martin.
Sir, how would you rate the correlation of current affairs and media consumption and coverage on these results? When we look at some of the findings, we could sense the amount of coverage on a specific country or a specific topic translated into results. Are you able to assess how these youngsters are consuming media? What is the effect of media coverage and exposure around the country or a topic on these results?
In my lifestyle, which is the 6th theme, we do ask the question about how do young people consume media? Where do they consume media? Is it from traditional print sources, or is it from television or radio, or is it from social media? And the dominance of social media is just high. I mean, our young people, especially this cohort, the Gen Z, I think, spend 8+ hours looking at their mobile phones. That's where their impressions are what they see on their mobile phones. So that's what will come through in our last finding. Do we see a correlation? Absolutely. No doubt that their worldview comes from what they see. And the fact that they are much more open today to being global citizens, to choosing who their allies and enemies are what they consume on their mobile phones. So yes, no doubt, a great correlation. And we will have all of these findings. We'll have some experts talk about it. Maybe you can comment about the findings as well, and we publish it in our white paper on what these correlations are. But you need to put all of them together. So I hope our decision to stagger the findings are fine, because I see a lot of questions that I would have been easily able to answer. Yeah. Over here, Akshata, Ajit wants to ask a question.
Sunil, thank you first of all. Very, very impressive findings, and this is something which is going to be very, very helpful to especially in the business community as well as for the policymakers. I had a question around the energy transition or climate change or food security. Have you addressed these questions as well in any of the sections? And
Yes.
especially for GCC, as we look at transitioning towards more green technologies and maybe moving away from oil, is that something that is on the youth's mind as to how will their future
Yeah.
be going forward?
Yeah, very important question, especially the fact that COP28 is happening here in the UAE. We asked those questions. There was a special section created for that. We will be releasing those results very soon as well. But from the past reports, we have actually asked this question for many years. It's not a new question. But in a couple of years ago, I think we asked the question, how do you see climate change? Do you have the propensity to boycott a brand if they are seen to be damaging the environment? And 60% of the Arab youth said, yes, we will boycott a brand that is seen to be damaging the environment. So climate change is a critical question. We actually will be working on this with the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment and coming out with the results together with them. But very, very interesting findings. And we look at it, I think much more commonality. I think 10, 15 years ago, there was no understanding of sustainability of environment within the Arab cohort. But you can see suddenly that aspiration to be able to live a sustainable life. In fact, the Arab world will be the most affected by climate change. Not many people realize that as we sit in air-conditioned rooms like this one, because your temperatures are going to double in the next 30 years. So, it will become impossible for life to be here. So climate change is a critical issue we address, and we'll come out with those findings. Yes. But an indication is how young people look at it as a top issue. Yes. There must be some people at the back. Any questions? Okay. Ethni, you have no questions today for us. I'm surprised. Okay. Yeah. Okay. There's a mic for you.
Thank you. On page 22, we're looking here a lot about Iran and Israel, the conflicts, and what the youth are talking about in terms of what might happen there. Why do we not have the voice of Iran in this survey? And is that just you're not asking, or there's not access?
It's the Arab Youth Survey, so
They're
not Arabs.
influencers in the region, no? Okay, no, I understand.
It's an important part of the
Yeah.
region. I mean, we were even thinking of adding Israel, but we said let's keep it Arab Youth Survey.
No, fully understood.
Yeah. Thank you. But yeah, who knows? One day we'll go into Iran and ask them. It's such a young population as well. We should get their views as well. I have no doubt about it. I have seriously no doubt about it. Absolutely. A question at the back, yes, of course.
Yes.
Please, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Yasmin Seridar. I'm coming from Al Shaya Group.
Of course.
Along with my colleague Raya as well. So I have one question, please. With regards to page 26, you've mentioned that the first country that people would like to live in is UAE, and then comes USA. So I would like to know, why is it that USA is the second country that the Arab youth would like to live in? What are the reasons? I'm aware that you included UAE, but what are the reasons for USA?
Yeah. So we did not ask that question. I think there was a question here about Saudi Arabia as well. So we asked, because UAE was consistently the number one, we added a question, why do you choose UAE? But we did not ask the question. The questionnaire is half the battle to get this survey gone, because we are looking at nearly 200 questions. We have a finite amount of time with these people that we accost in public places. If you go beyond a time, they'll lose interest and walk away. So we couldn't add questions. I wish we could give you an answer, But one could deduce, when you put things together, you know, the importance of USA as an influential country, the fact that they have been consistently in the number 2 choice, and of course the massive amount of soft power that the US have in the young minds, you know, people in young minds. So while they do not consider them as a big ally, but they consider the United States as a model nation. So there's no going away from that. So the dominance of the US is huge. So we can deduce that, but we didn't ask the question. Maybe next time. Okay. I think we are done here, but we are available for more questions. You can connect with us at any point of time. You want additional data, country breakups, especially friends from the media, we can give it to you. We would welcome all of you to join us for lunch. Lunch is served in the foyer outside. And thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.